Yeah, ganja people, greetings again, and I mean blessings and prosperity. There, another In Focus episode, and I mean today will be tonight a day somewhere and a night somewhere. As they normally say, it's 5 p.m. somewhere. No, anyway, they get it just. Today we're not going to be looking into ganja so much, you know what I mean? We're going to take a different approach. We're going to dive into mushrooms, mycology, psychobin, and all them stuff there, you know what I mean? Today we have an expert in the mushroom field as regards to type of mushroom, what the mushroom does, growing it, and all of them things there, you know what I mean? Anyway, without further introduction, which wasn't really an introduction, you know what I mean? I'll leave that to him. Darren Springer. Blessings.
Yes, King.
Yeah, King, so, you know, welcome again.
Yeah, man.
Jamaica,
Yeah,
welcome.
Yeah, man.
Keef magazine in Focus, welcome. You know what I mean? So, just give you an idea, who is Darren? For all those who don't know what Darren does. Just give us an idea.
So, it's funny because I still say I'm trying to work out who Darren is in my life that I'm living. Yeah, I'm working on that still. But with that said, you know, on my day-to-day grind, my name's Darren Springer, as you said, Darren Springer, also known as Darren the Baron on the social media. And depending on where I am, depends on what hat I'm wearing. People say, oh, I wear many hats. But my history is that, you know, I'm born and bred in the UK, in London. I'm the first generation born in the UK. My family's from Barbados. And my mother arrived in the UK when she was 10 years old. And from what I remember in the conversations we've had, she cried for weeks, if not months, after arriving in the UK, and was asking why the sun had disappeared. Where's the sun gone?
So basically a Caribbean family moving from the Caribbean to UK, used to blue skies, now seeing a lot of grey. I mean, what's happening, right?
Yeah. So as a 10-year-old, I guess that can be pretty traumatizing, you know, like when all you know for 10 years of your life is seeing what you see and knowing what you know. And then being, I guess, sold a dream, sold an illusion that when you're going to arrive in this place, it's going to be greater, it's going to be better. And I don't think it was greater, I don't think it was better. That's just my own perspective, my own perspective. But with that said, we've gained a lot from that. I'm here because of that, you know, journey and experience, but at the same time, I do think we was tricked, you know, in that transition from, you know, you guys are formerly, you know, kidnappees of ours, slaves of ours, and then you can return to the UK, to, you know, different countries have different agreements, to Spain, France, right, Belgium, whoever colonized you, you know, you return to their lands.
Take on their customs and
take care of their stuff, you know, like, and I guess it appeared a good look at one point in time. It seemed like that was, you know, tangible, because they told us the streets were paved with gold, you know, and all of these kind of ideas that it's going to be greater. It's Great Britain, you know. But with that said, where I'm from, East London, United Kingdom, as black people, people of Caribbean heritage, people of African heritage, you will find us pretty much at the bottom of any spectrum, whether it's economical, educational, health, you know, you name it, you know, and when it comes to the negatives, you know, we're the most in prison, we're the most dying of diabetes, and, you know, you name it, like, it's like, it wasn't a great deal.
So, you know, with that being said, I mean, coming from the Caribbean, blue skies, transitioning into a complete different surrounding, grey skies, you know, just blue skies and grey skies. Let's keep it at that for now. And added to that, the already cultural and economic challenge that faces the Caribbean persons who have migrated or immigrants who have gone into a foreign land Britain. You know what I mean? They're basically saying that, hey, not a good look for you guys making a living there, making a life there and all of that. So how exactly did you get introduced to mushrooms during that journey? How did mushrooms come into play? How did that, you know?
Yeah, well, mushrooms didn't come into my life till way down the line. I was in my 30s. I'm in my 40s now, so I was in my 30s when mushrooms consciously arrived, when we're talking about psychedelic mushrooms, as something that was going to be a part of my life, my way of life. Before that, I'd heard of mushrooms, I knew about psychedelics, but it wasn't something that I looked into, that I'd taken, you know, or anything like that. But my journey, just as a young black male, first generation born in the UK, somehow or another I was just born with an interest in knowing who I am. Like I was born wanting to just know who I am, where am I from, that type of vibe. So knowing my story as far as, oh, I'm born in the UK, but my mum was born in Barbados, you know. Like, we've got this history that takes us back to Africa. Like, yeah, some reason or another I was interested in that, man. Like, what's going on?
What's going in the blog?
Yeah, bro. Like, I'm in London. I'm first generation born in London, but there's a line, a lineage that no one's not really talking about. And some reason or another, I was interested in that, man. And you know, music played a big part. You know, cultural music from all levels, in just kind of being the catalyst, being the trigger, being the thing, the inspiration to wanting me to explore more. So with that, it led me to just wanting to develop myself, man. You know, do better, you know, for whatever that means. You know, at first it was like learn more, get knowledge, you know, eat better, you know, do better things, that type of approach. But then it led to, okay, so, all right, now I know that I've got African heritage and lineage that takes me back to the first peoples that we could ever fathom being human beings on Earth. What were we doing? How did we do it? Like, before we got whatever we've got now, what were we doing? You know? And that's what led me going as far back as I could and working my way forward. That led me to mushrooms.
Well, it is said that in order to know your future, to better understand your future, you need to take a step back into your past, right? Yeah. Because you need to know where you're coming from in order to know where you're going. Yeah, so basically that's what you did. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Alright.
Without knowing it, without consciously doing it at the time, there was missing links. There was missing links. I wanted to find out what those missing links were, you know, and that was the inspiration around it. Music played the biggest part. I would have to say primarily rap music, hip hop music coming out of America, primarily. That was, I don't want to say the conscious hip hop, but just the rebellious hip hop. The rebellious, it may not necessarily be.
Persons like...
Alright, so it started off with like your Public Enemy, NWA, Ice Cube in particular. It led to other, as I matured, I wanted to listen to more mature artists, the artists I listened to, I wanted them to mature, so I could still listen to them.
So it was basically a journey.
Yeah, man. But it was, you know, that, you know, it started off with just that rebellious side of things, man. You know, like just appreciating that my frustrations, let's say with my education, like just being in school, knowing that I was being taught stuff that just didn't feel comfortable, man. Just didn't feel like you're telling me the truth. You're lying to me, man. You're like, I'm in school, you're teaching me, but I'm not feeling this.
So your curiosity basically drove you to do a lot of this, or drove you into researching more about yourself, where you're from.
Yeah, man. It was all, you know, and then between that, the music led me to organizations, particular individuals, anything from Nation of Islam, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. You know, I was learning about this through the music, as well as stuff that my family around me. You know, imagery, you see images and posters and books. And, you know, and I was curious, man. I was curious. So yeah, all of that together is what eventually led me to mushrooms. Because when it came to mushrooms, I'd heard of them through my childhood, primarily in school, going to school with a lot of white boys that used to take mushrooms, do pills, LSD, cocaine. You know, they've done everything. Yeah, they was doing everything. So for me, that was like a no-no. What we do is ganja and a little drink, and we're all right. But as I delved deeper into learning about more Caribbean, African culture, the more I learned, we deal with these plants. We deal with that organic technology. That's what I refer to. We deal with plants. We know about if you fall over and cut your knee, Granny knows what to put on the knee, innit? Right, right. She knows what to do. And if you're coughing and ting, all right, let me get this, drink this, let me rub this on your chest. Like, we got that. Right, that's what we do, yeah? All right. So part of that was psychedelics, mushrooms, you know, different psychoactive plants. But at that time, I wasn't aware of that, and I wasn't actually comfortable with that. I was like, nah, man, that's like white boy stuff, man. That's what the white boys I went to school with used to do. That's all, yeah. Everything so that the Most High, the Creator's we got inside of us. We don't need no external.
So basically, back then you had a stigma towards the whole mushroom.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Like, I grew up, I always share, you know, that, you know what it's like, you go to school, any place that you go, on the Monday, you know the news cycle, so on the Monday at school, Monday you turn up in school, everybody's talking about what happened over the weekend, right? You know, like what happened over the weekend. And I just always remember between me and my brethren, the conversations that would take place. It was standard every week, the same conversation. You know, when you either stayed at home, you played on your computer game, or you was more active. You was out on the streets partying, chasing women. You know, it was that's what was coming back, from computer games to just going out and partying. But the white boys, that when they turned up on a Monday at school, they were like, yeah, so we went into the forest, we took LSD, and aliens came out of the sky. I was talking to a tree for hours. You know, we're like, rah. Basically, over the years, I ended up in a point where I just felt bad for them, man. I just felt like, rah, they're just on the road to destruction. It's over for them. You know, like, yeah, rah, man, talking to trees and shit. Like, what the fuck?
So, what's next, right?
Yeah. So for me, it just wasn't relevant in my day-to-day life, as well as like the spiritual journey and path that I was on. Like, no, man, everything you got, you need. You know, you don't need drugs. But I later come to find it's not a drug like I didn't give it to us as drug, and it's the way that the people that I was familiar with who are using these things.
Oh, it's perceived.
Yeah, how they use it and how I was introduced to this world was not necessarily by the best qualified. So they're just young people who are experimenting with drugs. That's how we learn about a lot of things in life where I'm from. We learn about family, we learn about sex, we learn about everything just through the people around us. We don't have many conversations with our family and get an in-depth understanding of what things are. So for the most part, my family would have said, them things are drugs, you stay away from them. Especially psychedelics, them things turn you crazy. Right. You know, that's what I grew up hearing. So it wasn't something that I was interested in, now, far from it. So when I saw them white boys doing it, I was like, yeah, leave them to it, innit? Let me run a little weed, let me have a little drink. And like, yeah, I'm alright. That's where it started, man. But to answer the question, it led me to exploring what were we doing, how did we do it. And over the years of me doing my own research, doing my own Googles before Google, I've come to find out, right, we deal with this thing. We actually do deal with this. And although that I had never partaken in it, I felt before I judge it, before I condemn it, before I say this is not our thing, this thing is wrong, this thing is bad, let me do my research.
Having an opinion on something that you have never experienced was the point, right?
Yeah.
So we heard about the young childhood days when there was a stigma based on what you knew back then, or based on what you were taught growing up, onto the whole mushrooms, ganja, all of that, you had a stigma towards it, and you're basically hell no for you. So let's fast forward a little bit. What changed? What was yeah, that moment that everything went bam.
Yeah, again, it was a combination of a couple things, but I think it was primarily one of the teachers that I was studying under. Give him a shout out, Bobby Hemmett. He was very much he's out of America, he's based in the States. And he was very much into the esoteric, into the occult, into spiritual practices, into practical, like, forget what we call intellectual masturbation. Plenty married, plenty books. It can be bait all day, chat and conversate, but it's like, how do you apply that so that you can actually move forward in whatever you're trying to do, get results? And then what he got me into was the application, man, doing stuff. So okay, let me not just read what we was doing in Africa, let me do what we was doing in Africa. Let's do it, innit? Let's do it, let's see what happens. Because if, I don't know, man, praying to Jesus, certain man are praying to Allah, there's a whole heap of options out there for you to engage in your spiritual path, and all of them are valid. I think all of them are valid. They all have something. Yeah, some have more substance and are more valuable to other people because it's their lineage, it's where they come from. So Hindu, man, get into your Hinduism. I ain't gonna hate on you. That's your thing, blood. Right, that's your thing. So what's our thing? If my thing wasn't Jesus and the church, what they gave me where I was born and raised, and I found out that's what they gave my mother, that's what they gave my grandmother, but before that we were doing other things. What were we doing? And let's give it a try, if that's our thing. So with that, that's what led me to finding out that we deal with mushrooms, we deal with these plants, herbs, stuff you rub under your eyes, stuff you put in your ears, in your nose, in your mouth. Like, we got so many different traditions and practices where we deal with this type of stuff. I was like, wow, this is what we're dealing with. So I started to want to learn more about that.
Okay.
So I set up an organization called Ancient Future back in the days, and that was like the first official thing when I came out of my journey being a young black boy out of the streets, got a semi-good education, but got attracted to not wanting to be a 9-to-5er and work for the system. So I looked for other options, and that led me to just being independent, self-sufficient, from the streets to learning just different ways that I could eventually be independent, and that led me to setting up my own organization, which was Ancient Future. So the principles behind that, shout outs to Wayne Chandler, who I got that concept from, but just using the ancient traditions to create something now, be present, that can allow us to co-create a future for ourselves, man. So like, I'm on that, like, I don't know what's coming, but what I do feel is that we can create something, like we definitely have the power to create something, like, and say, this is what's going on, we can make this happen for ourselves. So I roll with people, I like to connect with people who want that kind of frequency, it's like, so what can we build on? And not, it's easy to say let's build and do certain things, but yeah, those who are really doing it, who inspire me, because I can see they're really doing it, I can learn from them, and then I know that I'll be doing the same, inspiring people, and they can learn from me, kind of vibe. So yeah, we're just trying to make it happen in that way, man.
Cool. Alright, so Ancient Future. After Ancient Future, I guess that's where you basically started making a name for yourself.
That's when I was getting bare hate. Because no, let me not say that, let me tell you that back. Now basically, when I stepped out as Ancient Future, so Ancient Future was twofold. It started off as a supplementary school, an alternative school for children, because my children were homeschooled. So they were homeschooled, and everybody was scared that we were just going to keep them in a cupboard and they weren't going to see the world. So although we done active things to make sure our children learned and could study, we also set up a space where other families who wanted to homeschool their children or who were homeschooling their children could bring their children, so homeschool children could interact, because everyone says, if your children are homeschooled, how are they going to meet other children? They're always concerned about that. Somewhere like in the UK, that could actually be a challenge, that could be an issue, that could be a thing. So because we knew it could be a thing, we worked on setting up those provisions for children to be able to come and connect with each other based on they were not going to public schooling. So that was one arm of Asian Future, and the other arm, so that was love. There's a lot of love for that. I've got a lot of love for that. But the other arm of Asian Future is doing workshops and presentations based on people who I was inspired by. These books I'd read, DVD or videos and tapes at that time that I had read, who basically inspired me in some shape or form or another. And that was at a point where I went from history class, I would say, into metaphysical class. You know, I was moving out, like, I got enough of this history class. I kind of get that. Yeah, I know who we are, where we come from, what we've been doing. All right, now I know how we do it. Like, what do we do? Now we know now we know what we do. What do we do with it? You know,
What's next?
Yeah. And there were certain key people who gave me that, man. I just feel that they gave me ammunition, man. They gave me fuel. They gave me fire. So with that said, I wanted to share them. Like, oh, you're big. The world needs to know who you are. At least people in my community need to know who you are and what you do. So I started to invite over these folks. And they were more dealing with the metaphysics, the occult, the esoteric, what some people call the dark side, the shadow, the taboo. All these things that as black, Caribbean, African people we don't really know about or deal with. But in essence, it was actually what we deal with. It's really what we deal with. And we taught the world how to deal with things. And all of it is ours, the good, the bad and the ugly. And for a lot of the part, we just get a little part of it and we try to focus on the good. But I looked at some of the bad that we done, the negative, and like, right, it's still cool. It's still okay, it's still relevant. And those were the people like Bobby Hemmett, Alim Bey, there's the Phil Valentines, there's that Alim Bey, there's a lot of guys from the United States primarily that were dealing with certain knowledge and information that was like, shh. And then Bobby Hemmett led me to a book called DMT, The Spirit Molecule by Rick Strassman, because in his presentation, he was talking about this book, and he was saying how this book and this subject and this molecule called DMT, which in the book was tying in with this connection with afterlife and near-death experiences. And they were saying this book was delving into how there's a spirit, when people take this thing, there's a spiritual side to it that they didn't expect. They were just doing research on near-death experiences, but when the people were coming back, they were like, boy, when I take this thing, this is what happened. And when Bobby led me to the book, and when I eventually read the book, and I was reading about this DMT, which is a psychoactive that you find in nature, in certain plants and roots, but it's also, you find it naturally in the human body as well. So Bobby Hemmett was connecting it with melanin, because it connects with melanin and melatonin and serotonin and those receptors that we have in our brain that give us, you know, our day-to-day rhythms, our sleep patterns, our dream world, our rhythm, our dance, our music, all of them things that he was connected with all of that. So I'm like, right, this thing is deep. And they're talking about this thing that you take that connects you to the spirit world as well as connects you to like your ancestry and your lineage. And basically, bro, with this book, I say it again, DMT, the spirit molecule, that's the main title. There's a subtitle, I can't remember the subtitle. It's something to do with near-death experiences. And the author is Rick Strassman, Dr. Rick Strassman. And in this book, when I got to the testimonies of the people who were taking the DMT, now there's different ways that you can take DMT. People might be familiar with ayahuasca. That's a popular, trendy, kind of psychedelic entheogen that's in the consciousness now. The thing that makes ayahuasca is the actual, another plant which has DMT in it. Dimethyltryptamine, that's what it's known as, DMT. So this DMT, you find it inside these various plants. So when these guys are taking it in the laboratory with the doctors, they're actually getting it through injection, that it's being injected into their system. So I'm saying all that to say this. When you're reading the testimonies now, this woman there's several accounts, several people suggest similar stories, but this first woman that I read that just resonated was a white woman who basically said, when I came to the laboratory to do this experiment, because she had a near-death experience, and they just wanted to see, is a near-death experience similar to what this psychoactive experience is like? And let's do our research. So she was saying that her near-death experience was very spiritual, it was very revealing, it was very deep, it was a deep experience. So for her to be going to this laboratory, a science, it's all clinical, it's all silver, them laboratory state, and to be having this experience, she said it felt very uncomfortable. So it felt very uncomfortable after doing this thing in this space to start off with. It was being injected into her. So all of these things had an impact on how she initially felt what the experience would be. But in her testimony, what she goes around to say is that little did she know that after taking the injection and having this experience, that all the things around her didn't matter. Because it was way beyond what was going on in the room at that time. And in her testimony, and in several of the others in this book, they talk about being transported to different places and spaces and communicating with different beings and ancestors. If there was 10 different testimonies, at least 7 of them, they were all talking about going back to places like ancient Egypt, ancient African places, or ancient American places. Like, these were European people that had no connection with these places, if you look at what history tells us. But somehow or another, they were connected to these places, were being taken to these places, were saying, I was transformed into an ancient Egyptian goddess, and I was once ruling. And on the real, that was the path that I was on. I was doing all of our practices to connect with my ancestors, to connect with who I understood the word of gods.
Outside of the lab. So you were doing what they were doing inside the lab, outside the lab.
Yeah, in my own way, in my own way, but just not with psychoactives, man, just through meditation. I was learning about yoga, I was learning about, tantra, I was learning about, I'd learned that, dreams, what I go on for dreams, like, that's something, that's something. So that was, I talk about just tools in my toolbox. Dreams was one of my tools, they were just things that I worked with that led me to wanting to become, to connect with my ancestors, to connect with the gods, our creators. And I was working with different things, man. And then eventually I got to this book, these testimonies, and I'd heard about psychedelics. I knew about it since I was a youth. I was like, you know what? I need to try this thing. Before I keep dismissing it and saying it's not the thing, it's the white boy hippie thing, let me try it. Because these people are talking about going to ancient Egypt and being a little pygmy. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm working with and connecting with. That's who I am. That's who we are. So how comes these men are jumping in? Like, they're in there, innit? Like, they're in there. So I want to be in there. I wanted to be in there. So that was like the decision. That was like the period of time that I made the decision to step